And if I may, vamos! Canada 1, Peru 0. This is presented by Degree. I'm fired up. A lot of Canadian football supporters are as well. I'm assuming that at least the majority of the panel here, with Gareth Wheeler, Christian Jack, and Oliver Platt, are too. A match that could have had a much different feeling if not for Jonathan David. He scores on his 50th cap. Jacob Schaffelberg comes into the match and changes the dynamic for Canada. A red card given, a potential red card, well, maybe not a potential, a red card missed, and Maxime Crépeau continues his god-like performances lately in Canadian red. Let's go to Christian Jack first, who is not in Kansas City and is probably happy about that today because it is not that hot where he is right now, but I'm sure you've got some thoughts, my friend.
Yeah, great to be with you all. Not in Kansas City, dad duty this week, but with graduation of certain people in my household. So, we'll be moving on to the next game, but just a marvelous occasion, not only for Canadian soccer, but for Canadian sport. Just to see Canada go out there and make history, to go out there and stand up in a game like that. To a team that is so savvy in the way that they play that game. There's lots of other words you could come up with, by the way. We'll go with savvy for now, and just go up and go toe to toe with them, and really take control of the game in the second half. So, just a wonderful, I thought a wonderful second half performance. They were really on the ropes early, but they found a way to come through it. And sometimes you just got to win a game, and they found a way to win. And that man again, Jonathan David. I don't know what you guys thought, but the moment that one-on-one it was played through, I knew he was going to score. I knew he was going to score. This is I've seen him score goals like that for club all the time. And that, I think it was 9 seconds from the moment Kyle Larin took that ball, played it into Jacob Schaffelberg, played it to Jonathan David, and it was in the back of the net. It was almost the perfect scenario that you could build up with Canada at that moment, because they had all the possession and they couldn't break them down. And then suddenly Peru with 10 men got further forward. Then they made the transition away and score. So, brilliant to see Jonathan David step up in that way as well in his 50th cap.
Gareth Wheeler.
The good news is I have the chat working today. I figured this out. So that's a positive.
It's not good news.
I'm just looking for all the comments about the Canadian strikers being the problem with the team, because it was just a crazy reaction by so many after the first 3 games under Jesse Marsch. This was the difference in the game. Let's not sugarcoat this. Canada didn't play well here at all today. I think there's a lot of question marks about the tactical setup, the approach, a lot of things to do. But like KJ said, they survived, and the win is what history will remember. It's not going to be the process. That's just something for us to dissect on the side. But the difference tonight was the fact that Kyle Larin and Jonathan David, along with Jacob Schaffelberg, created a wonderful Canada goal in transition. Completely, that was the thing that Canada was probably most concerned about, committing too many players forward in the game and then getting stuck on transition. But they did it to Peru. And the fact that you have a player like Jonathan David that can take full advantage of a moment like that, more so than anyone else on the field. You had Kyle Larin, and KJ documented it after the last game, coming back, putting the work defensively as well, which, believe it or not, is very important in the game in 2024. He won the initial challenge and then played a wonderful ball to Schaffelberg to spring the team forward. It was that one moment that Canada were able to take advantage of. Peru gift wrapped this for them. Petulance, they were butchers. They're a really poor team. I just, not much quality in that team at all, but the wherewithal, the dark arts, the BS that they bring along with them, it almost worked. They were the better side for almost an hour before Araujo decided just to take matters in his own hands. And it was just sheer stupidity by the Peruvians, and they threw the game away. I mean, this was more of a must-win for me. Well, it was a must-win for both sides, and then Peru just ended up throwing it away and throwing it right into Canada's favor. So well done to the boys for finding a way. Difficult conditions. There should never be a 5 p.m. kickoff, by the way, in Kansas City, Missouri at the end of June. I think it's just idiotic. But Canada, that's what you'll remember, is now they put themselves in a position, if they pick up a point in their third match, unless Chile does something incredible against Argentina tonight, then they'll move on to the next round of Copa America. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
Ollie, last first word to you.
They won. That's it for me. They won the game. They won their first game at a Copa America. And a really significant win and a really significant moment, I think, for this program to get that. And like there's a lot to get into in the match in terms of the Canadian performance and some of the areas that I think are obviously going to need improvement, and some of the help they got today in getting that win. But they won, and I think that's all that matters. You now have a team that is in a position, barring a major upset from Peru or Chile against Argentina, that needs 1 point to get through to a Copa America quarterfinal here, and you can't make a big enough deal of that.
All right, well, just a reminder that on Vamos presented by Degree, especially these post-match reaction shows, we will be, of course, showing your comments as much as we possibly can. If you have any questions for the panel, please do put them in the chat, and they will come up as we have time to get to them. As Ollie mentions, there are so many layers to this match, and I think there's a lot of ways to feel about the performance from the Canadians, but you're right to celebrate when the results come Canada. You should savor the moment. It is a huge occasion, and I think one of the biggest talking points, of course, is the fact that they have their first win and first goal under Jesse Marsch. I'm sure we'll talk about the violent play from Peru at times, but let's start with the goal. Ollie, I'll come back to you first on this, because it didn't really matter who was going to score it so long as there was one, because this match and the post-game feeling is much, much different if it's another game under Jesse Marsch, under this new regime, if there are no goals scored. Understanding the competition, but that must be the biggest weight in the world off their shoulders right now.
Yeah, when they're able to play in transition like that, they're a dynamite team. Like, there's very few that are going to be able to deal with that and live with them. And, you know, Peru, I think, are probably kicking themselves for allowing themselves to get in that type of situation with 10 men. But all the same, all credit to the players who orchestrated that goal. It took two big moments of quality from Larin and Schaffelberg to get the ball up the pitch and into Jonathan David's path. And David, just in those situations, is like his ability to stay in control in all senses, you know, mentally as he collects himself for the finish, technically in terms of his touches to set up the finish. It's the best part of his game for me, and what makes him such an exciting player, and the type of player who's going to command the transfer fee and has scored the goals at the level he's scored them at. So it was a brilliant goal, and that's Canada at their best. Is, you know, even when perhaps the possession play and some, you know, certain aspects of their attacking play hadn't been great on the day by any stretch, they can still kill you in a flash, in a few seconds, with a transition moment like that.
Well, Christian, you just spoke to Jonathan David's quality, and I don't think anyone in the room here would disagree with that. But there has been a narrative around Jonathan David lately that in these big games, in these big tournaments, he hasn't been as effective as the supporters know he can be. What is it about Jonathan David's composure and on top of his quality that makes him the guy for Canada when they need a moment?
Yeah, what a lot of nonsense, any criticism of Jonathan David. It's just mind-blowing to me. You know, this country doesn't deserve this guy. They have no idea how good he is. We have no idea. And by the way, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The world has got it wrong on this guy as well. So far, the world of football has got it wrong. And someone's going to get an absolute gem and a bargain of a player this summer. He's 24 years old. He's one of the best defensive centre forwards in the world. And he can finish like one of the best centre forwards in the world. I'm not saying he's one of the best, but he can finish like it. And the best footballers, the best finishers in world football are when they get put through in one-on-one and you know they're going to score. Because so many other players freeze and he doesn't. We saw it in CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. We saw it in El Salvador. We've seen it so many times where he has that ability to break through. And I said it before, I'll say it again. I knew he was going to score. I knew he was going to score. You wouldn't want anybody else. And for me right now, you know, this is a player that is going to score goals like that for Canada for many, many years. And at 24, what a star. That's the biggest story of the day. The second one we'll get to later is what Marsch did at halftime. But the biggest story of the day is that Alphonso Davies got his moment in Qatar. And Jonathan David, who, if he's not an equal of Alphonso Davies, he's very close. He got his moment in his Copa America, and he deserves it. And no one deserves it more than him.
Gareth Wheeler.
Does it again. An Opta stat came up that 26 of the 27 goals that David has scored for Canada have been in competitive competition, not friendlies, not useless matches. He scores in big games. And oftentimes, I know people tune in, they want to see free-flowing football in the international game. It's very rare. We saw 2 games in Group C today at the Euros, which
don't remind me.
Wasn't a lot in it. No, but it's just... This is typically the way that international football is played, and it's moments that win games. And the moment fell to David, and he took it. And so I echo the sentiments of KJ absolutely and completely. about Jonathan David. And that's why Canada are such a dangerous side. It's not because they're playing the best football, that they've completely aligned under Jesse Marsh and what he wants from them right now. It's that you have difference makers in the team. You looked at the Peruvian side. I mean, they brought in 4 subs that were all 4 of the 5 subs that they brought in were all older than Canada's oldest player on the field, and that was Jonathan Osorio at 32. They brought in like a 40-year-old, a 30, like players with no legs, and you saw it, and it made a difference. And they went down to 10 men. There was simply no coming back for Peru at this point. This is a young team, and you look at players like, where are the leaders? Where's the player the players that are going to grab the game by the scruff of their neck? I mean, David can't in the position that he plays, but what he can do is take his chances and keep on working. And based on the work in the attacking third and the effort that he puts in, the question came up: is it Crépeau? Is it David, the man of the match? You got to score goals to win games. It's got to be Jonathan David. I mean, for me, and that's no disrespect to Crépeau at all. He played his role in this game, but Jonathan David, for me, he's the reason why Canada are coming away with the full 3 points.
Okay, Jay, you brought it up just moments ago, so I'm actually going to try and sandwich this question together for you when we talk about lineup tweaks and how the flow of the game was going. But we can't look past the red card and the fact that Canada did get to play up a man after all. First and foremost, thank goodness Jacob Schaffelberg is okay, because that looked a nasty injury for the Nova Scotian right away. But he shook it off. He is tougher than I am, certainly, and he was able to be a big impact in the goal that Canada scored. But with the red card and with Canada going up a man, do you think we might have been destined for a 0-0 without it if it was 11v11, or do you think the changes that were made by Jesse Marsh out of necessity, let's be honest, might have been able to be enough to find a winner regardless?
I think the changes pushed the confidence level into Canada's favor. That they were able to believe that they can go on and win the game, because they weren't shaking. They were on the ropes and almost on the ground at halftime. Like, it had gone off the rails. No composure, lack of control, lack of genuine power. Fitness looked like a little bit of a question mark. All the things that Peru wanted to throw into the mixer where they knew they couldn't beat you, they were beating them in. Forget the technical quality and the pace, but they didn't give them the chance. So I think the changes made the difference. And that's why I think Jesse Marsh is a huge part of this win. And it's a big storyline because he was brave and bold. Did anybody, no matter how bad they played, did anybody believe that they were going to make 3 changes after 45 minutes? How could we? After all the evidence that Marsh has displayed through 3 international games where barely any changes have taken place at all. And suddenly he goes, no, not 1, not 2. Let's put 3 on. Let's change the shape as well. And then Johnston coming into midfield when the ball was on the other side, I think was very important, because it just gave a little bit more of a help for Osorio and Eustáquio to push higher. Schaffelberg free forward with Davies. Davies is, I mean, I've said it, I don't know how many years now, but I don't like Davies in that wide attacking position. I know a lot of other people do, but you can see how impactful he can be in that wing back role and how much more someone in front of him can get the amount of space because of Davies being on the field. So, look, I thought Marsh's tactics changed it a lot. Look, we'll never know. To answer your question, Adam's a good one. We'll never know. But I think being in that position, but I said earlier, the irony is that Canada started having all the ball and couldn't break Peru down. And it took a Peru attack and a breakdown from a throw-in to transition for Canada to have 9 seconds to put the ball in the back of the net, Ollie. So, Ollie, that for me, that's football, no? Like, sometimes it goes that way.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we saw with Canada quite a bit, over the past couple of years and during World Cup qualifying. Was there were games I remember during that run where they weren't playing particularly well. Like, I even think of the Panama game, they ended up winning 4-1. They were in a bit of trouble early in that second half, the way that game was going. And then they just have the ability to snap their fingers and produce, a moment of real explosiveness and electric play in transition, and the game totally flips on its head. So it was another one of those moments. Like I said earlier, I think it's the greatest asset of this team. I do think personally the red card was the biggest factor in the game. Jesse Marsh's changes did help, and they were better early in the second half than they were in the first, but that I don't think is saying a lot, because the first half was awful. Peru, I think, they tried to give it away in the first half with that ridiculous headbutt, and then they made sure of it in the second half with that tackle.
Yeah, it's hard to say in 10 plus minutes. I'm with Ollie. If the red card, it'll, without the red card, I'm not sure Canada wins that game, in fairness. And although KJ, you're right, bringing on 3 players, I'm not sure if Marsh had much choice. It was interesting they decided to bring off Cornelius specifically. He was on a yellow after the first game. Was he already looking ahead to Chile? That didn't make a whole lot of sense for me because he was a rock at the back. Perhaps the distribution of Kamal Miller on the left side of a 3 is what he was looking for a little bit more, but it's just so hard to tell because we barely got into the flow of the second half and then the sending off took place. I just look, it's the first game under Jesse Marsh where the team, I think by most people, not necessarily me, because I knew it was going to be this kind of game. It was going to be really difficult to play. But I think a lot of fans thought that Canada should go on and win this game. And there was pressure on the team to respond that way. And I just thought he got his starting 11 completely wrong. Completely wrong. One of the strengths of this team has been the Davies-Miller combination down the left-hand side. They've been rock solid against really good opponents. The fact that Liam Miller was playing out of position down the right-hand side didn't work. The fact that he started Richie Larea from the get-go didn't work. His last start was February 25th. He's played like 30 minutes for Canada over the course of 2 games. There's no way in that condition that Larea, for me, was able to start that game, and it showed. Davies, like KJ said, pushed further up the field. Not for me. He's been really good at left back for this Canada team. Just that starting 11, nothing worked, and they were almost punished for it on multiple occasions. I'm not sure why he decided to throw that team in the blender. And yeah, maybe the changes at halftime helped, but certainly what the difference was in this game was the sending off in the 59th minute. That's what turned the tides. And an older, slower, physical Peru team had to be safe. They were tired. They didn't have legs, and they really couldn't challenge Canada. So it was just about Canada going out and finding that goal. And thankfully, because of Laren, Schaffelberg, and David, they were able to do so.
KJ, your thoughts on the lineup decisions? I know what you think of the changes and how you think it impacted the match, but just to pick up on that point from Gareth, where I think a lot of people were asking some questions with the changes coming into this game. What did you make of those from Jesse Marsh?
Yeah, I didn't mind them. I mean, it didn't work, but I don't think it's a disaster. I understand why he wanted Richie Larea in because of his tenacity. He wanted him in there because he brings a real energy and a fight that he doesn't get from a lot of the other ones. We talked about Tajon's struggles confidence-wise. I just think that it takes the Alphonso Davies, arguably your best player, out of what I think is his best position. And again, we're back to that. Oh, where does Davies go? Where does he not go? Right. So I didn't mind it other than that. I think, the Kamal Miller substitution. I understand what Wheels is saying. I would just say that, Derek Cornelius has played very well, but the gap still is very close in the eyes of Jesse Marsh between Derek Cornelius and Kamal Miller. And on a first half where you could have made probably quite more changes if you're allowed based on everybody's performance. Yeah. I don't think anybody could really have argued with that. And as he said, he changed the shape. They got some fresher legs on, and I thought Miller did okay. So, Jesse Marsh is still experimenting and still learning about his players, and you can only do that in the highest level when you put them on the field and see what they can do about it. So, look, all in all, I think that, the 45 minutes wasn't great, but I love the fact that they were in the fight. And sometimes you got to watch teams suffer and play a different style. And I watched it with a smile on my face. And I know Canada fans will be like, oh, this is terrible that we're not getting the ball. But just to see them stick it in and keep going and talking to each other and suffering and struggling and watching Kone struggle again, but trying again, and just seeing the suffering is only going to get them better and prepared for a World Cup. It's the only thing you can ever ask for. And I thought Eustachio was class. I have to say, he never stopped running. And the amount of times he covered ground defensively to block shots and to win balls back again, and to play in a midfield 2 like that with Kone and then Osorio, were very different and they're not midfield 2 players usually. I thought he was very, very good, guys.
Great. Ollie?
Yeah, I just think on that first half, I don't think that was anything new in terms of the kind of problems that Canada ran into. I don't think, I think we've seen that before. Whenever, they're a very good team in transition, as we've talked about. I think when they play against a team that, is around their level, not one of the lower teams in CONCACAF, obviously, where they're more comfortable, they play like a team against a team like this, and they are challenged to have the ball a little bit more and to build up from the back and play through the thirds and control the game more than they're maybe used to. They really struggle. And I thought they struggled badly at that in that first half. Like there were so many situations where Peru were being given transition opportunities because of cheap giveaways from Canada, poor decisions, sloppy play. Kone, I love the guy. I think he's a phenomenal young talent, but he had a nightmare of a half in central midfield. He wasn't the only one, but the ball was just being given away far too easily, far too frequently, and a better team will punish them for that. So that is the area for me where, I said it before Jesse Marsh got hired, and I'm still saying it now. There has to be improvement and there has to be development with this team, or I think they're going to struggle at the highest levels and the biggest tournaments like this one. Again, the red card, I think, changes the dynamics. The substitutions did help to change the dynamics to a certain extent, and they're able to have much more joy after that.
Garrett, this is going to be a conversation every time he doesn't score, have a worldy performance, I'd imagine. But Alphonso Davies, now that he is the captain of this team, he opens himself up to more responsibilities, more of the spotlight, if that's even possible. But with KJ mentioning about his positioning in the game, and I know your thoughts on this just in general with Alphonso, how does Canada find a way to get more out of him? Is it enough that he's just steady, and if he's playing at left back, he's having great performances defensively and pitching in on occasion, or is there still a desire for him to get the job done and be the best player on the pitch on attack and in defense?
Alphonso Davies should play left back. I'll just say that again. And that was the thing. If you want to bring in Larea for those aforementioned reasons, play him down the right-hand side ahead of Alistair Johnston. Why split up? Why split up Liam Miller and Alphonso Davies? Miller's not a right-sided player. I was trying to look back when the last time Liam Miller played on the right. It just didn't make any sense for me. And it just seemed like Larea and Davies weren't on the same page playing down that left-hand side. In fact, the only times when Davies has shone when he's been more forward up the field is when he's playing with Atakubi, when he's in the team. Those players complement each other very well, so I don't mind that. But it's just more about the structure around him. I had no problem with Alphonso Davies today. He wasn't the focus for me. It was more about just the team structure and what it looked like. But again, I can gripe about the tactics. I can gripe about some of the decisions that were made. At the end of the day, they won the game, which I'm thrilled about. And they showed the wherewithal and the mentality to do that. I'll go back to just one other thing. Forget Davies. Tejan Buchanan is playing for Inter Milan right now. And I know he's not playing a whole lot of football. But for Canada to be at their best, he has to be impactful. He just does. After David and Davies, those top level players, there's not that many of them. And Tejan, for me, is one of them playing at the club that he's at. I would have loved to have seen him start to, and play 11v11 today, because I think it was the first game that he would have got a little bit more joy playing that natural role rather than tucking in and tucking back all the time in a defensive way. And he's got some snarl to him as well. He's got some nasty in his game. And I just thought it was a missed opportunity to kind of get Tejan going, him coming on for 20, 25 minutes, whatever, at the end of the game when you're pressed up against it, or when you're 11v10, and the game is kind of choppy and just, it wasn't really the best time for me. I would have loved to have seen him 11v11 from the get-go. So I think just Tejan has to play for this team to reach its heights. So it's going to be really compelling to see how they use him. There's a lot of calls I know in the chat as well, guys. I'm not sure how you feel about Schaffelberg pushing for a starting spot. He works, he's working hard. He's got the legs, he's got the speed, he's got a lot of intangibles. I think I still prefer him coming off the bench, being the X factor kind of change of pace guy. But I think Tejan's role, Adam, that's a long-winded way of saying it. I think Tejan's role is more important right now than looking at Alphonso Davies.
Christian, anything there you want to pick up on?
I think Schaffelberg might start on Saturday.
Yeah.
I think he might play ahead of Davies. And again, depending on the system. But I like Gareth. I like him coming off the bench. I think he makes a big difference. But he has earned a lot of praise, and he deserves a lot of credit for the amount of times he kept going and getting forward. And I said it before: if you're an opposition fullback or in that heat, and they're playing in Orlando, so there's going to be heat even though it's at night. And suddenly you get through 50, 60 minutes and you're pretty exhausted and you're puffing, and then you get Jacob Schaffelberg start running at you for 30, 35 minutes. It's not fun. So that is a real good thing to keep in mind if you're Canada. I just think, I'll go back to what Ollie was saying. And of course, I understand what he means about building up. And that is, I think, an area that Marsh is going to really take on for going forward. And I just think that perhaps my expectations are a little bit lower in a sense that I'm trying to see what this Canada team, what are we learning from them on this regard, right? I didn't see anything in that first half where I was like thinking that, I'm not surprised that they struggled a little bit in that area, to build up in that way. I think they've still got a lot of work to do in those areas. And I just, maybe it was just the fight that I saw them give today and not back down that I think I'll probably take a little bit more away from it with that than the tactics of things. But it does bring up lots of scenarios ahead of Saturday where, depending on, obviously we don't know what's going to happen tonight, but we don't want to start turning around this storyline where it's like, oh, Canada only needs a draw. Canada only needs a draw. Because I don't want them to go out there and play like they only need a draw. And I'll be quite frank, guys, I want them to go out there and put their best foot forward. And if they get knocked out against a team that is better than Peru, I'd rather them do that than just bunker in and not necessarily, show the style that they're trying to evolve on, if that makes sense.
Well, we're down to the final few minutes. We're about 25-ish minutes away from kickoff of that other match that KJ alludes to, Chile and Argentina from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. KJ just brought it up, and we have a question from Michael. He asked, what is the best result for Canada in the Chile-Argentina match? Argentina win to give Canada a shot at second in the group. That might be what Michael's leaning towards. Ollie, what do you think?
Anything that's Argentina not losing. That's all we need, right? Like, if Canada gets a point against Chile, they just need Chile and Peru or Argentina rather, to avoid an upset in either one of those games. So that's anything that's Argentina staying unbeaten in this group is good news for Canada.
Yeah, I would just add that.
I'm sorry,
Peru,
KJ, go ahead.
I would just add that Peru walked off the field like their Copa America was over.
Yeah.
They're going to play one more game, and that's against the world champions. So I think we know what they're probably going to finish on. So in effect, it looks like what could be a last 16 knockout game in Orlando between Canada and Chile, with obviously one team having the advantage depending on how tonight goes.
Some of those guys can find their next gig inside the octagon. Like, honestly, like butchers. There wasn't much football, was there?
Okay, so looking ahead to Saturday, and I know that you guys will be back tomorrow. Some of you will be back tomorrow with Andy and Jordan in studio, but in a mixture, Gareth Wheeler, of a final word and a hope or an expectation for Saturday, where are you leaning right now?
Hope and expectation. I think you have hope based upon the mentality of this group. And through KJ's interviews, I recommend you go watch some of them on One Soccer. They're all so confident. And sometimes you just wonder if it's misplaced, but then they keep on fighting. And even when things aren't going their way, the desire, the belief, I think that what has been instilled in them over the years still exists, and it's trumping anything else right now. And sometimes, the one thing about Jesse Marsh being hired when he did, you wonder how Canada was going to maximize the fact that he is the manager. And I think it will pay off over time, but the clock is ticking towards the 2026 World Cup. Copa America, for me, it was way too soon. You almost need to rely on the mentality aspects, like the intangible aspects, rather than the tactical approach right now. So I'm gonna back that this group of players back themselves. They don't back down against anyone, nor should they against Chile. It's a better opponent that they're going to play on the weekend, but an opponent that's going to come off a result against Argentina. We'll see where they stand. So Canada are in the position they want to be. This was a must win. They won that game. Let's go on to the weekend and see if they can pull this off.
Ollie, same question to you.
I think they got to play better against Chile. If I'm being honest, I still have a lot of areas of that performance are going to need to improve. If that, just to get the draw that I think, obviously that they need, that would be a great outcome to get them through to the quarterfinals. So there's work to do, obviously, in a very short period of time. I understand, the spirit, the fight, all of that is great, and it's great to see maybe it returning to where it was a year or two ago, and maybe was lost a little bit. But I think at these tournaments, when I just didn't think Peru were very good at all today, and I expect Chile to be better, and Canada will need to be better as a result. And I'll just add, I think Schaffelberg should play. I've been on the side, and it may still be the correct opinion that he's maybe more effective off the bench, but kid is just making an impact every single game right now. He stretches teams, he gets behind, he gets around, creates more space for others by doing that. Having watched England earlier today, I'm certainly seeing the value in a player who can do that right now.
Was waiting for one.
And Schaffelberg is providing it, so I'd put him in the team.
KJ, I gave you the first word of the show. I'll give you the last as well.
Wow, it's an honor.
It sure is.
I would say, first of all, I think it's going to be a transitional game against Chile, a little bit more than this one. I want people to understand, and maybe they already do after watching Peru today, it's not hard, but Chile's better than them. And it's pretty significant better, by the way. And I know that they're on the older side like Peru, but they're far more technical. They're far quicker, and they're far more intelligent too, by the way, as footballers. So I think we should be careful. And I don't mean this in terms of, look, let's word this in two different ways. Internally, they have absolutely every right to be celebrating that game now and believing that they're going to get to a Copa America quarterfinal. Externally, I think we have every right to say that they are the underdogs to progress against Chile. And I still think we have every right to say that based on what Chile have performed in the history of this, the way Canada played for the majority of today's game. But that doesn't mean they're not going to get through. I just want people to understand how far in such a short amount of time this Jesse Marsh Canada has come. And under Herdman, John Herdman, they did a great job for a long time in terms of turning into that brotherhood and getting everybody on the same page and building an identity. And the shift now has gone from that to incredible self-belief and confidence within this group that is really united and together. Gareth mentioned it. I saw it in my interviews. They genuinely now believe that they're going to get there. That is a belief I don't think they had even in the World Cup. They said the right things, but it's different. But I still say that, yes, Chile are beatable. But if Chile go into that game knowing that they'll win to beat Canada, we should still be very careful and hesitant in a hostile environment to think that Canada should be favorites. So I think I would just say that and hope for the best and be cautious in all of our optimism and as we move forward in terms of how we look back on this tournament.
Well, a 1-0 result for Canada to celebrate, far from perfect, but you got to start somewhere, and they start with their first win under Jesse Marsh today. The goal from Jonathan David, and KJ's right. Celebrate tonight, but while the players might be confident, supporters, I think, want to see a continued run of improved play every time they take to the pitch. That's going to wrap it up for us tonight here on Vamos, presented by Degree. We are back in studio tomorrow, and we'll have more to continue to break down this match, take a look at the result from Chile and Argentina later on tonight. But we thank you, as always, for not just joining and watching, but interacting and engaging in the show. We'll do this once again after Canada's match on Saturday in Orlando. We cannot wait for it. We want to thank Josh Deming for getting this show started and producer Armin in the background for keeping us running along. But for now, that's it. Thanks for joining us on Vamos, presented by Degree.